Stranded in the vast emptiness of space, over 200,000 miles from Earth, the Apollo 13 crew faced an unimaginable nightmare. A routine moon landing turned into a terrifying fight for survival when an oxygen tank ruptured, crippling their spacecraft. Limited power, dwindling oxygen, and a damaged trajectory left them adrift with no clear path home. Every breath was a gamble, every decision a potential life or death moment. The world watched anxiously, captivated by their struggle. This wasn't fiction, it was reality. How did these three astronauts, Jim Lovell, Fred Haise, and Jack Swigert, overcome seemingly insurmountable odds? How did ground control, working tirelessly against the clock, devise a plan to bring them back? Join us as we explore the harrowing tale of Apollo 13, the mission that defied death and redefined the limits of human endurance. Chapter 1: The Crew and Their Mission. In 1970, NASA was riding high. Apollo 11 had successfully put men on the moon. Apollo 12 followed suit. Now Apollo 13 was ready to continue the legacy, proving that moon landings were becoming almost routine. Apollo 13's mission commander was Jim Lovell, a seasoned astronaut with experience from Apollo 8. His crew included lunar module pilot Fred Haise. A last-minute change saw Jack Swigert stepping in as command module pilot, replacing Ken Mattingly. Mattingly's replacement was due to pre-flight concerns about his potential exposure to German measles, ensuring the crew's health and the mission's integrity. This change occurred only days before the launch, adding a layer of complexity to the already challenging mission. For Lovell, Apollo 13 was the culmination of years of training and sacrifice. Born in 1928, he was a decorated test pilot before joining NASA. He had already experienced space before, but this mission was meant to be his crowning achievement, a chance to finally walk on the moon. But fate had other plans. Chapter 2: Disaster Strikes. April 11, 1970. Apollo 13 launched from Kennedy Space Center. At first, everything seemed normal, apart from a slight issue with the Saturn V rocket's center engine shutting down early. But mission control adapted, and the spacecraft continued on its way to the moon.
Out.
2, 1, liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
Liftoff, the clock.
2 days later, on April 13, at exactly 55 hours and 55 minutes into the mission, the crew was conducting a routine stir of the oxygen tanks when suddenly, boom! A loud explosion rocked the spacecraft. Alarms blared. The crew was shaken. Lovell's heart stopped as he looked out the window and saw something horrifying: a venting cloud of gas. That wasn't normal. "Houston, we had a problem," Swigert's voice crackled over the radio. Mission control in Houston scrambled to understand what had just happened. The explosion had ruptured one of the oxygen tanks, disabling a second one in the process. The result? The command module Odyssey was critically damaged. Power was failing. Oxygen was leaking. And without oxygen, the fuel cells that provided electricity were shutting down. They weren't just in trouble, they were in mortal danger. Chapter 3: Survival Instincts Kick In. With the command module dying, the crew had no choice but to move into the lunar module Aquarius. Originally designed to land on the moon, Aquarius suddenly became a lifeboat in space. But there was one problem. The lunar module was never meant to support 3 men for the 4 days it would take to loop around the moon and return to Earth. Every system had to be rationed: oxygen, water, power. The temperature inside the spacecraft dropped to near freezing. The astronauts, shivering in their suits, barely had enough food and water to sustain them. And then came another problem: carbon dioxide buildup. The filters in the lunar module weren't designed for 3 men, and CO2 levels were rising to deadly levels. The crew needed a way to fit a square peg, the command module's filter system, into a round hole, the lunar module's filter system. NASA engineers, working furiously back on Earth, devised a solution using duct tape, plastic bags, and pieces of a flight manual. The astronauts followed their instructions exactly, saving their own lives in the process. Meanwhile, Mission Control had to make a crucial decision: how to get them home. Should they turn back immediately or loop around the moon using gravity to slingshot back? They chose the latter. Apollo 13 passed behind the moon, completely cut off from communication with Earth for several agonizing minutes. When they re-emerged, the mission to land on the moon had officially become a mission to survive and return home. Chapter 4. The final test? Re-entry. The journey back was filled with tension. The spacecraft had barely enough power to run the critical systems. The crew, exhausted and dehydrated, were running on sheer determination. But one final challenge remained: re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. The heat shield was undamaged, but would the makeshift repairs and power-down procedures work? No one knew for sure. As Apollo 13 plunged into the atmosphere, mission control and millions around the world listened in silence. The usual radio blackout period was expected to last 3 minutes. But those 3 minutes passed. Then 4. Then 5. Had the crew burned up on re-entry? And then, a crackling voice over the radio. "This is Apollo 13. We're home." Cheers erupted in mission control. The world celebrated the impossible. The crew splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean, rescued by the USS Iwo Jima. Chapter 5. What happened to the crew after? For Jim Lovell, Apollo 13 was the mission that defined his career. He never made it to the moon, but he became a symbol of courage and leadership under pressure. His book, Lost Moon, became the basis for the 1995 film Apollo 13, starring Tom Hanks. Fred Haise suffered a severe urinary tract infection due to dehydration, but went on to have a successful career in NASA and aviation. Jack Swigert, the last-minute replacement, became a national hero. Sadly, he was diagnosed with bone cancer years later and passed away before he could take office as a U.S. congressman. Apollo 13 proved that human ingenuity, teamwork, and determination could overcome even the most impossible odds. NASA learned valuable lessons about spacecraft design, safety, and risk management, ensuring that future missions were safer and better prepared. Apollo 13 was a mission of tragedy turned triumph, proving that when everything goes wrong, true heroes emerge. What do you think? Could you have survived in their place? If you enjoyed this deep dive into Apollo 13, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.